Yo, what's up guys? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you my top stardoms and situms heading into week 7 of the 2021 fantasy football season. There are a ton of teams on bye, so a lot of you guys out there are probably scrambling to find out who to play. Well, you came to the right place because I'm going to tell you who I think you should be putting in your lineup in week 7. And before we get into the players on the list, I would also like to note that when I do make these lists for you guys, I try to avoid super obvious plays. Sometimes I'll have, quarterback, running back, wide receiver 1 options on the list, but I try to pick players that maybe a little bit under the radar or maybe coming off some bad games. So for example, obviously Derrick Henry is a must play each and every week, but you're rarely going to see him on a list like this of mine unless he's coming off, a down game or something like that. Oh yeah, and also make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. All right, so before we get into the week 7 list, I'm going to quickly recap week 6. And we had a ton of really nice, awesome calls in week 6. Quarterback was a little bit rough though. I'll start with my starts and then move on to the sits. So at quarterback, I said to play Taylor Heinicke in a great matchup with the Chiefs. He finished as a quarterback 24 with only 10.28 points. So that was a huge miss for me. I also said to play Trevor Lawrence. He ended up as a quarterback 16 with 15.86 points. Not a great week at all. Not horrible, just kind of whatever. But at running back, this is where I really hit it out of the park. I said to play James Robinson. He was the running back 12 overall, 17.6 points. That was a hit. Joe Mixon finished as the running back 4 overall on the week with 23.8 points. That was a hit. DeAndre Swift, running back 16 with 15.2 points. That was a hit. And by the way, this is all in half-point PPR scoring, just to clarify that. Darrell Henderson, he finished as the running back 5 overall in the week with 23.7 points. That was a huge hit. Darrel Williams filling in for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He finished as the running back 6 on the week, 22.4 points. Huge hit for us. And then Khalil Herbert filling in for Damien Williams, who was filling in for Montgomery, finished as the running back 11 with 18.2 points. That was a huge hit. So all those guys were running back 1s except for DeAndre Swift, who was the running back 16 overall. So still a solid running back 2. At wide receiver for stardoms, I said to play Terry McLaurin. He did not do well, only finished as a wide receiver 63 with 4.8 points. Him and Heinicke busted. McLaurin was kind of dealing with an injury, but yeah, that was a bad call. Diggs, he finally had this bounce back game that I predicted. He was the wide receiver 8, finished with 19.4 points, so that was a nice call. Emmanuel Sanders, his teammate, finished as a wide receiver 26, 11.6 points. That was a nice solid play there. Brandin Cooks had a bounce back game as I projected with 13.4 points, the wide receiver 19 on the week. That was a nice call. And then Michael Pittman of the Colts finished as the wide receiver 63, tied with Terry McLaurin, 4.8 points. That was another miss for me. And then at tight end, I had one hit with Ricky Seals-Jones. He was a tight end 6 on the week, 13.8 points. And my one miss was Dan Arnold. He finished as a tight end 32 with only 3.7. And then to recap the sits, I only had a few of them. Justin Fields at quarterback, I said to sit him. He finished as the quarterback 18, 14.26 points. So that was kind of a good call for me. If you played him, I don't think you played him out there, but if you did, he didn't completely annihilate your lineup, but it wasn't a great play to start him. So that was a decent call. And then I said to sit Derek Carr. Obviously, I try to not give you guys bottom of the barrel guys. I try to, give you guys that you might be considering playing. I said you might want to sit Derek Carr. He finished as a quarterback 11, 21.54 points. So that was a bad call on my part. And then my worst call was Damien Harris. I said to sit him against the Cowboys. I thought that they wouldn't be able to run the ball on them very much just with the game script and all, but it was a competitive game. Damien Harris for the Patriots finished as the running back 13, 17.3 half PPR points. So that was a bad call on my part. But at wide receiver, my situms were solid. Allen Robinson for the Bears finished as a wide receiver 46, 7.3 points. Great call from us. And then Robby Anderson, he finished as a wide receiver 37 with 8.6 points. He could have had a much better game, but he had several drops in this game. He got in the end zone and was still only the wide receiver 37. So that was a hit for us, but he could have finished much higher. All right, now we are ready to get into my stardoms and situms for week 7. All right, so I'm going to begin with my stardoms and then move on to my situms. So I'm also going to go position by position in each category. So we're going to start with the quarterback stardoms. And my first stardom at the quarterback position is going to be Tua of the Miami Dolphins. This is a solid matchup with the Atlanta Falcons. Their defense doesn't scare me at all. And with so many quarterbacks on bye, you can do a lot worse than playing Tua this week. Hopefully he can build off of a great week 6. He missed a few games with injury, and then in week 6 he came out. He put up 329 yards, a couple touchdowns. So for me in this game against Atlanta, he is a high-end quarterback too. All right, you're probably already playing Matthew Stafford, but I just have to bring his name up, and he is my second and final quarterback stardom for the LA Rams. This is a revenge game. He's going to play Detroit, his former team that he spent his whole career with, and I do expect the Rams to be up, pretty big early on in this game because they are a much better team than the Detroit Lions. And my only worry about this play is that they might not need to air it out, so if they're winning by a lot, they might just kind of run out the clock later in the game. But I do think he will start off hot, and he will be part of the reason that they are winning big if they are up big on the scoreboard. And to me, he is a safe bet for at least a couple touchdowns in this game with upside for more. He is a locked-in quarterback one play this week. All right, now I'm going to move on to my running back stardoms, and I am going to be going off of half PPR scoring. That's just what I like to do on this channel unless I say otherwise, just because it's a nice happy medium between standard non-PPR and full PPR. So my first running back stardom is going to be Damien Harris of the New England Patriots. He gets a great matchup against the New York Jets. In fact, they are giving up the 6th most points to running backs according to this chart on Fantasy Pros. And he's been a tough player for me to predict. So I made him a stardom against Houston, and we lucked out because he did get in the end zone. The Patriots were actually losing that game pretty heavily early on. I expected them to be up big in that game, and he was going to get a ton of rushing attempts, which he still saw 14 for 58, got in the end zone. So that was solid. He did have a fumble, but he put up an okay game. And then in week 6, I made him a sit-em because I thought the Cowboys would be up big early. That game was very competitive throughout. He had a great amount of carries, 18 for 101 and a touchdown. He looked fantastic in that game, put up 17.3 half PPR points. Now he gets the Jets, and I'm pretty confident that in this matchup, the Patriots will be leading this game, and if not, it'll at least be a competitive, close game. And I know there's been some talk of Ramondre Stevenson getting some more work there in New England, but I still think Damien Harris is the lead running back there. It's a great matchup. He's a talented player, and if the game script stays according to plan with the Patriots leading, I think he should see some nice volume. For me, he is a solid high-end running back to play in week 7. All right, my next stardom at the running back position is going to be Darrell Henderson of the LA Rams. If you haven't realized yet, Henderson is an every week play already, and now he gets the Detroit Lions. That is a fantastic matchup. If you look at this chart, the Lions are giving up the 3rd most points to running backs in fantasy. So the matchup is juicy. The Rams should be leading and be able to call plenty of running plays in this game. So dial up Darrell Henderson as a must-start running back 1 in week 7. And speaking of good players and good matchups, my next stardom running back fits both of those categories. That's going to be Cordarrelle Patterson, running back for the Atlanta Falcons. He's been great, and although I think he is a nice sell-high candidate, I talk about him in some of my buy low, sell high videos, I still love him this week in a fantastic matchup with the Miami Dolphins. He should be efficient with his carries and see his usual healthy number of targets. If you look at this chart, once again, the Miami Dolphins are giving up the most points to running backs in all of fantasy. So to me, you can lock him in as a low running back 1 play this week. In fantasy, opportunity is so crucial to a player's ability to put up fantasy points, right? So my next starting running back play is going to be Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. He is still filling in for an injured Christian McCaffrey, and now he gets a great matchup against the New York Giants. As you can see on this handy-dandy chart, they are giving up the 5th most points to running backs in fantasy, so it's a fantastic matchup. He is a safe volume play with a little bit of upside if he's able to find the end zone. To me, in a week with so many players on bye, he is a nice, solid, low-end running back 1 play. All right, and my final stardom running back for this week is going to be James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. He's been up and down, but it usually comes down to his volume and then his ability to get in the end zone. His best weeks are always when he's able to find the end zone. And against the Houston Texans, I think he should see both solid volume and potential to score a touchdown. The Cardinals are heavy favorites in this game, and it is a good matchup for running backs. Here are the Houston Texans. They're giving up the 9th most points to running backs in fantasy football. He's been solid, and he should see a healthy number of carries in this game. He is a great bye week fill-in for all of you guys out there who might be missing players with bye weeks. And even if you're not missing players because of bye weeks, he's still a solid play. For me, he is a really, really solid running back to play this week. All right, now we're going to move on to the wide receiver position. And my first stardom for the wide receivers is going to be DJ Moore of the Carolina Panthers. In half PPR, as you can see, he's had a down last couple of games, but this is just a reminder that he is an elite talent, and this is a really solid matchup. This is just me advising you not to panic sit him. Most of you guys out there are likely not thinking about sitting him, especially if you're missing a lot of players with bye weeks. But I do expect a bounce back game against the New York Giants. They're giving up the 10th most points to wide receivers, so it's nothing crazy, but it's not a bad matchup at all. For me, I like him as sort of like a mid wide receiver one play this week. So yeah, lock him into your lineup. I think the bounce back is coming for DJ Moore this week. All right, my next stardom wide receiver is going to be Chris Godwin, wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The matchup against the Bears it's not a great matchup. It's not a bad matchup. I don't think they're going to be able to stop the Tampa Bay Buccaneers by any means, but I don't think they're just going to be bleeding points nonstop. But regardless, I do like Chris Godwin this week for a few reasons. Well, first of all, he is a talented player, just in general. So that's one of the main reasons. But additionally, there is going to be no Antonio Brown this week. And last I heard, Gronkowski is likely not going to play. He's a talented player, like I said, and he has been heavily targeted in the red zone, end zone type of area. And he should see plenty of targets in general in this game with Antonio Brown out. And if Gronkowski does end up not playing, he's a talented player who hasn't been performing very well for fantasy. As you can see, he's been pretty pedestrian, especially his last 3 games. His first 3 games, he was pretty solid. But I think this is a great get-right opportunity. I think you should see plenty of opportunity in this game. For me, he is a high-end wide receiver to play against the Chicago Bears. My next wide receiver stardom is going to be Brandin Cooks of the Houston Texans. I love Brandin Cooks this week as a really, really solid play during a week that you might be missing some players due to bye weeks. He is just a target hog in general. The only 2 games that he really didn't perform was against the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots. Those are both brutal matchups. The Buffalo Bills defense has been great all season for the most part, and the Patriots love to lock down the other team's wide receiver 1. So I didn't expect great production out of him. I liked him last week against the Colts, and he put up a really solid line, 9 for 89. No touchdowns, but he saw 13 targets, put up 13.4 half PPR points. And against the Arizona Cardinals, I expect him to continue this momentum. Like I said, he gets tons of targets, and Houston should have to air it out in this game. I expect the Cardinals to be leading this one pretty early, and for me, he is a nice, safe wide receiver to play. And next, we have Darnell Mooney of the Chicago Bears. He is our next wide receiver that we're going to talk about as a stardom in this matchup. Now, I must admit that he is not the safest play due to bust potential if Justin Fields, the Bears starting quarterback, struggles in this game, which, the start of his career has been a little bit rocky, but the Bucs secondary has struggled pretty mightily this year on defense, and Mooney has flashed a little bit here and there. He's seeing a decent amount of targets. Against Detroit, he put up 16 half PPR points. Last week against the Packers, 13 points. So he has shown the ability to produce. And to me, he is a nice bye week fill-in that actually has a little bit of upside. So to me, he is a high wide receiver 3 play with that upside that I mentioned. And our final stardom wide receiver for week 7 of the 2021 fantasy football season is going to be Sterling Shepard, wide receiver for the New York Giants. He's been injured for the last couple weeks, or before week 6, I should say, a couple weeks before week 6. He came back in week 6 against the Rams, and he saw 14 targets, caught 10 of them for 76 yards. That was a great play for fantasy, especially in any PPR format. And now he gets a tough matchup with the Carolina Panthers, but the Giants will be without wide receivers Kadarius Toney, Kenny Golladay, and Darius Slayton. So just because of the projected volume alone, with him being the main wide receiver there, he is still a solid wide receiver to play against the Carolina Panthers. All right, so we are going to move on to the tight end position, and I have 2 stardoms this week at tight end. The first one is going to be Dallas Goedert of the Philadelphia Eagles. He is now off the COVID list, and he will return to the playing field with one less tight end demanding targets in Philly, with Zach Ertz recently being traded to the Arizona Cardinals. And with that being said, the Raiders are also giving up the most fantasy points to tight ends, as you can see on this chart. Here is tight end. I sorted it, and there are the Raiders. They're giving up the most points to the position. And Goddard, he's talented enough to where I think he should be able to expose this matchup. He is a great, solid, mid-tier tight end 1 play for me this week. And my final stardom tight end is going to be Mike Gesicki of the Miami Dolphins. He has seen a healthy number of targets since only having 3 in week 1. You can see his targets here. It's been really, really solid since then. Even with Tua returning in week 6, there was some thought that maybe Jacoby Brissett was just targeting him a lot, but Tua came back in week 6, and Gesicki saw 9 targets, caught 8 of them for 115 yards. There are not many tight ends out there that can put up those types of numbers. So his volume and talent alone make him a nice mid-tier tight end one this week. All right, so now we're going to move on to my sit-ems, and I only have 3 sit-ems this week. I only like to give you guys players that I'm pretty confident about. And even with that being said, there are so many players on bye this week that you might even be forced to play some of the players on this list. Really, none of them are must-sits, but they're players that I really have tempered expectations for, and I'm trying to avoid if possible. So the first one we're going to talk about is quarterback Daniel Jones of the New York Giants. You might not have better options, and like I said, I'm going to try to avoid bottom-of-the-barrel players on this list, like Zach Wilson or Geno Smith. Obviously, I'm really trying to avoid those guys as well. But Danny Dimes is someone that you might be considering starting just because he has flashes here. So with so many players on bye, he is still like a low-end quarterback 2, mid quarterback 2 for me. But, you know, and he'll probably start for you in 2 quarterback leagues. But I just think he has so much bust potential with how many injuries the New York Giants have to their wide receiver core. Like I mentioned, no Kadarius Toney, no Kenny Golladay, no Darius Slayton. And it's a matchup against the Carolina Panthers, who've been pretty solid on defense. And if you see his last 2 weeks, you know, only putting up 4.8 and 7.1 points against the Dallas Cowboys and the LA Rams. That's not great. I made Danny Dimes a sit against the New Orleans Saints, and he made me regret it. He always has, you know, the ability to put up points. But against the Carolina Panthers, I really think you could probably do better than Daniel Jones this week. All right, now I'm going to give you a quick sit-em at the running back position, and that's going to be Khalil Herbert of the Chicago Bears. Now look, like I said, there are a ton of players on bye, and you might be forced to play this guy. I get it. He's a starting running back, and that might be something you don't have any more of on your team. Okay, I get it. So for many teams, Herbert will be a must-start player just because he's a starting running back. But in a vacuum, I do not like the matchup, and the Bears could potentially need to abandon the running game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He could always fall into the end zone. That's, you know, just at any starting running back could fall into the end zone. But based on the matchup and the potential bad game script, because like I said, I expect the Buccaneers to be winning this game, he is nothing more than a low running back 2, high running back 3 for me against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, as you can see, these are the easiest matchups for running backs up top, and these are the hardest. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are one of the most difficult teams to score against for running backs, and this is including Myles Gaskin having, 10 receptions and 2 receiving touchdowns against him, kind of a fluky thing. So yeah, this is a brutal matchup, and yeah, I just don't like the game script potential there, so I'm trying to avoid Khalil Herbert if I can. And my final sit-em is going to be wide receiver Corey Davis of the New York Jets. This is a tough matchup against the New England Patriots in Week 7. New England shut that entire offense down in Week 2 with their quarterback Zach Wilson throwing 4 interceptions and 0 touchdowns. Davis went 2 for 8 in that game, as you can see right here on 5 targets. Really did nothing for fantasy. New England loves to shut down the other team's number 1 option. And while the Jets now have Jamison Crowder back at the wide receiver position, who they might, it's kind of hard to say who they'll view as the alpha, and they did not have him in that game in Week 2. I still think Corey Davis will have a tough go in this game. He is more of a traditional, alpha wide receiver, whereas Jamison Crowder kind of is more of a slot receiver, and I think he could still, be decent for PPR. I don't want to necessarily play Jamison Crowder, but I think the Patriots will try to shut down Corey Davis in this one. Long story short. Like the other players on this list, you might be forced to play him with all the teams on bye, but Davis is nothing more than a wide receiver 3 for me, and he has tons of potential to do nothing in this game. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please make sure to drop a like if you enjoyed the video or found it helpful. Subscribe to the channel for more fantasy football content, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.